it's funny because now with everything going on, I could have easily been a child that started expressing, gender dysphoric
Mm.
symptoms, right?
And we're on. So hello
Great.
everyone. I'm with Jack Jewell here. He's
Hello.
I found his channel very recently. He's a small YouTuber. So if you like what he has to say in this video, or if you think he's cute, go and subscribe to him. Yeah. He's also owner of the world's most fabulous mustache I have seen.
Thank you so much. You too
Yeah.
kind.
I stumbled upon your YouTube channel by accident.
Mm,
I mean, it's not
how
like I
did
was.
you?
It's not like I was actively looking for it.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
mean,
but
well, that means I must be doing something right. What video did you stumble upon?
you know what? I don't even remember. I think it was one of your shorts that
Mm,
showed up
yeah.
in my
I've had a
feed.
few of
But
those get big. So
yeah, no. But when did you start? Just like 2, 3 months ago? Oh,
yeah, I mean, I have a funny relationship with YouTube because I kind of, tried it out a few times in my
mm,
past, but
hmm
I mean, there's still videos on my channel from when I was 15 doing like piano tutorials. And then I tried my hand at like some lifestyle videos when I was 23. And then I did a couple education, like study style videos while I was at uni. But I guess none of those topics really, I don't think I was passionate enough about them to keep going. Whereas
right.
I guess at the moment, I have a full-time job, but I feel very motivated by all of this. And I just kind of, in my free time, I just can't wait to get back to the editing and like everything. So yeah, it's been a really fun journey. I feel like this one is going to be here to stay, hopefully.
Yeah, I hope so too. I hope so too. But because I think you make interesting content, and
Thank you.
if you guys want to know what type of content Jack makes, you can like introduce yourself and what kind of content you're making at the moment.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I'm Jack Jewell, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. So I'm from Ireland, but I've lived in the UK for the last 10 years, and now I'm based in London. So in terms of my content, I started it with the aim to kind of share my story. I've been through kind of some rough health issues with chronic pain and an autoimmune disease. At the moment, I'm doing really well, so that's great. But I sort of wanted to be a voice for some of these conditions as a patient when I tried to, find other people who've been through what I've been through. It was very hard. Like it's quite a rare thing that I have. Now, I started that, but then I'm also gay, and I've become increasingly interested in kind of gender woke ideology and the discourse around transgenderism and everything, and how this has sort of
Mm,
impacted like my relationships and like my involvement in the community. And I would say I used to be sort of a woke lefty, for want of a better term. And within the last year, I had a bit of like an awakening, which was a
right.
bit disturbing. And I
Mm,
felt like I really wanted to speak out about this stuff. But I guess I do see the two things as kind of intrinsically linked, because what really helped me kind of break out from a deep sort of health spiral I was in and mental health struggles was, learning that playing the victim and playing into victimhood is actually never the right answer. And I can see this permeating the whole LGBT or queer community. And I think it's like an epidemic in itself. So yeah, I
yeah.
think I think I will continue to make some content about like big pharma and sort of life as a patient. But yeah, I'm going to see where it goes.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting to hear because yeah, I was never a lefty. Like I was never a leftist to begin with, but I was never like conservative either. I was
Yeah.
always like a mildly liberal with some conservative leanings on certain topics, but I was never like very political. in the past,
Yeah.
like in my upbringing. Like generally, my parents are not into politics. Like they have their opinions, but like I never had them like push on me, so I didn't grow up with like specific political ideology. And I got into philosophy before I got into politics, and I'm grateful for that because you get a very, very different perspective on that. You don't see things in like black and white terms, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have a very similar experience to you. Also was not talked about at home. I moved over here. I moved to go to drama school, and I studied musical theater. Now that's a very, very woke left space, but
I
even
imagine.
10 yeah, even 10 years ago, politics and social identity politics was rarely talked about. And like, can you believe it? Me and my year, like we would make jokes about different identities and kind of ethnicities like in a friendly way, but like I can't imagine that going down now. But even when I was 21, if someone had asked me what's the difference between left and right, like politics, I couldn't have told you. And when I was 21, I voted in the election, and I had no idea like what these parties were, so I just voted for the Conservative Party on a whim, which is so funny. But
because you didn't like
say,
sit down and read anything about this party or to get to know what it stands for. Or
well, I mean, you have to remember, like I had moved from I'd only been living here a year, and I was very busy with my studies. But a girl in my year forced me. She was like, "You have to vote, even if you have no idea." Which I actually disagree with that, because it's better not to vote unless it's informed.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm 100% on that.
Yeah. So my journey with politics, I guess, largely then came out of LGBT circles, and that being very much like social politics. I feel like many LGBT or queer people think that they are politically informed and keyed up, but actually they think the majority of issues are social, whereas it's so much broader than that.
Oh, absolutely. You get this impression that a lot of people vote purely based on like social issues and nothing more than that.
Totally.
Like, especially in queer community, have this sort of mentality that you need to vote for the party that supports your cause as much as possible. But I think that's very narrow-minded, because the world doesn't end, with your queerness, your gayness, or your transness, etc., etc. I think there are more important issues at stake, like I think economy and just how much involvement government should have in people's lives, and economy as such, and should and like what level of influence should corporations have as well, and I think that is way more important than how racist is this party, or how transphobic are they. Like that's like, to me, that's like a secondary thing. I'm not voting personally. Like I'm sort of against voting in democracy. Not in a dictatorship way, but more like anarchist way. I just see it as one big lie. I don't support any political parties, and like in Norway we have 9 parties in the parliament, and like none of them support my views. So why should I vote for them just to feel like, oh, I've done my duty?
Yeah, no, I understand that. I mean, I wouldn't identify as an anarchist, but I guess right now I just look at the policy and I try and align myself to whatever party is kind of preaching the most. And I guess with the UK right now, I mean, the Conservatives have been in power for about 10 years, and they've done they've messed so much up. They've made so many mistakes. And then Labour is the more like center left party. But honestly, neither really appeal to me at the moment. Like when it comes down to it, I will be trying my best to kind of pick whichever one aligns more to the policy. But like, I don't know if you're familiar with Pink News, but they're an LGBT news. And personally, I think they're total trash, because everything is so ideologically driven. But they released an article where, the Labour Party here, which is center left, they decided, not to go ahead with promoting self-ID policy. If anyone doesn't know what that is on the call, it essentially means that if I, as a male presenting biological male, wanted to legally change my sex to female tomorrow, I'd be able to do that, without anything else. And personally, I can see how there's so much room for corruption there. But Pink News released an article where they said, every LGBT person now doesn't know which party to vote for because both the Conservatives and Labour are both against it. And I said it in one of my videos. I was like, like we should be empowering people to vote beyond their, queerness and minority status, and like, don't lump me into this. I don't know who to vote for. Like, it's such a groupthink mentality, and it scares me how Orwellian everything is going, really.
Yeah, no, I think so too. And it's a distraction from what's really going on. And I think something similar is happening in the USA regarding race, like skin color. Like a lot of Black people will vote Democrats because they have been told like this is the party that supports you, and the other party is racist, right?
Yeah, and it's totally unfounded. I mean, this is the issue: is that online echo chambers feed people the lie that they are inherently oppressed, and certain groups are out to get them. But really, like, we don't know how good we have it in a liberal society. And then these people walk through the world, and I was victim to this, or I bought into this. I used to see homophobia everywhere, where it actually was not. Sometimes it was just a straight man who we didn't have much in common. And me and my kind of certain circles I was in taught me to be hypervigilant and view normal interactions as, inherently homophobic. And it's a very bleak frame of mind to sit in.
Oh, absolutely. And, a lot of the time people are just curious, or maybe they just don't know and want to know.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and I don't think we should be, just stigmatizing everyone, automatically putting people into neat boxes and things like that. But we have a lot of time to talk politics here. But sort of before we get there, I would like to know a bit about your own story with. Are you gay or bisexual, by the way?
I'm gay. Yeah.
You're gay. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like your story with coming out first and foremost, and what was it like? Did you know that you were gay from early childhood, or was it something you found out later on? And did you have any trouble with that in your upbringing? And how easy was it for you to accept yourself?
Yeah, it's something I reflect on a lot. I mean, overall, the experience was pretty great, I guess. I, from a very young age, never identified with other boys. I found their behavior extremely alienating and intimidating, like the way, and in Ireland, especially back then, there was a big gender divide, and boys typically are very abrasive and very rough and tumble with each other. Quite intimidating to me. But I just used to find it terrifying. I mean, my mom, suggested I try football and other boys' sports, and just going to those, I felt like the fear within me. And obviously at the time, I didn't really understand it. But at school, I identified so much more with girls. Most of my friends were girls. I wanted to do more of the kind of social girls activities rather than play sports. And it's funny because now, with everything going on, I could have easily been a child that started expressing, gender dysphoric symptoms, right? Or like, given what's happening in schools and everything, a teacher could have asked me, what is your pronouns? Like, I see that you like all of these things. Like, do you still identify as a boy? Now, I mean, we can get into that later, but I think that is nuts that people are asking kids this question. But I would say largely I had a good experience. I mean, when I was maybe like 10 to 12, 13, I started having these kind of conscious thoughts about boys and men. I think one of my earliest memories is I was probably about 10 years old, and I used to go to stage school on Saturdays. And there was a boy, I was sitting with a boy, like waiting to go into another class, and he like really needed to pee. And he said to me, "Oh my God, my penis." And immediately I was just like, please tell me more. Like, as in, I didn't say that, but I was absolutely
Sorry.
fascinated by the comment, and I
Hmm.
just wanted him to keep talking. So I was like, what do you mean? But it's hilarious, and I couldn't have put a finger on that, like what it meant, but
Yeah,
it
yeah.
just goes to show, like, I truly believe that homosexuality is biological and innate, like from books I've read as well, to do with like brain scans and all of those kind of things. And I also think it's very telling that gender is not a social construct as a whole, as I mean, in my opinion, because I had no
Hmm.
reason to be exhibiting gender nonconforming, effeminate traits. There was no boys around me doing that. So that was innately part of me. I identified more with girls. Um, and by the time I was 14, I remember I was on holiday with my family, and we just happened to go to some like gay capital in Spain called Sitges. And my uncle, we were on this beach where it was sort of like semi, like nudity was kind of accepted, and there was a topless woman. My uncle said, "I better not catch you looking at her." And it was that moment in my head, I looked at her and I was like, "Yep, you are definitely gay."
Was this like a
So
big revelation for you at the moment, or
no, it was very much a slow burn, and it was
okay?
sort of like that when it was solidified. Now, if a doctor came around and asked me, "You have to decide right now that you'll be gay for the rest of your life," I wouldn't have been able to do that. Still, I would have been like,
Mm.
"Wait, hang on a sec." Um, but I did not. I came out to my friends when I was 14, and it was a good experience. And then I came out to my mother when I was 17, and I had my first boyfriend. Like, that kind of felt like the appropriate time. But for some reason, I never felt pressure to kind of come out and tell people. I was sort of happy it being
Mm.
my own thing. And then when I was dating someone, it just felt right. And I never grappled with accepting it too much. I think I was used to being different and not feeling like I belonged for a long time. So it kind of just made sense. I did definitely experience some homophobia, like in Ireland. I think slurs at school, like it was very, very harsh gender divide, and particularly with the traveler community sort of being yelled at in the street. But I guess the biggest thing that impacted my mental health was just that kind of sense of not belonging, like not being one of the boys, not fully being one of the girls.
Mhm.
And that kind of led me as a young adult to having a bit of a gray sense of identity, and kind of maybe underdeveloped personality in a sense. Like, I hadn't really figured out what my values were, and kind of what the kind of person I wanted to show up as in the world. So that's one thing I feel very grateful for the LGBT community, because some of my best friends are gay, and they really nurtured like just me as a person. And I definitely would not be the person I am today without them.
Yeah, I can imagine that. You know, I've seen so many like parallels in what you went through in your upbringing and in my own life.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and like you said, that you could have grown up thinking that you are gender dysphoric, or that you were born in the wrong body because of that experience, like not fitting in with the boys.
Totally. And I wouldn't have been able to articulate it at the time, but it did cause me distress. When like I went to scouts for years. If people don't know what that is, it's like the like Boy Scouts. You know what that is? Yeah.
Yeah, of course, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah, yeah. Which, looking back, so weird that I did that, but that was all boys. And I really used to. I remember the mornings I would go there, like I'd have anxiety, like thinking I had to be there and kind of put on this front. And I even went on these kind of
Mm.
camping trips with them, and I was in a tent with other boys, and that terrified me because I felt alienated. So I think I think one of the issues nowadays, like with this mental health epidemic in children and young adults, like obviously social media plays a big factor, but I think that there is something to be considered when adults are actively asking very young kids, "How's your mental health? How are you feeling?"
Mm.
Because there's a blissfulness in being a child and not realizing that you're perhaps anxious or struggling.
Mm.
Um, and I think we're putting too much on kids to actually articulate abstract thoughts that they're not old enough to really put into words. Um, So I think I was not aware, but had someone sort of asked me to articulate it or sat me down and taught me about pronouns and gender, who knows? I could have actually said, "Oh my God, I'm gender dysphoric." Like, who knows?
And I think it is happening more often than we like to admit, to be
For
honest.
sure.
And I'm not against schools teaching about the trans stuff or the gay stuff for that matter. But I just think it should happen at a certain age when you have developed enough maturity to understand that. I think like the moment you enter teenage years is like a perfect time for that, like 11, 12 age. Also, that's around the time when most people are entering their puberty as well. So that's when like sex ed should happen. But also, there's a big issue
Yeah.
with sex ed as well because, and I lived in a very conservative country at the time.
Okay. Where was that?
Oh, that was in Poland.
Oh yeah.
That's where I grew up, and sex ed in Poland is like only sex after marriage. Like it's allowed. Everything else is sinful. Like if you're masturbating, you're probably going to grow up to be a predator of some sorts, and stuff like that. And you know what that does to you? It creates this space in your head when you're starting to think of yourself as one, and eventually you develop very unhealthy relationship with your own body and with your own sexuality as well.
For sure. I mean, I think Ireland is similar in a way, but perhaps it was a few decades ahead. I mean, I think Ireland is inherently a super religious country, although people of my generation and younger, many of whom do not identify with religion. But what still gets passed down generation to generation is this sense of shame, because a huge part of Irish culture was wanting to kind of mix in with the crowd, and it was all small villages. So if you knew that a family was talking about your family, that was, you never wanted that to happen. And if one of your daughters got pregnant before marriage, she would be shipped off to like a convent and the kid would be taken away. And they have they still have an issue with if they see someone who's quite confident, they have an inclination to sort of, let's bring you down a peg and sort of, they don't like that. They find it quite intimidating. So I do relate to a lot of that. But I think in terms of sexuality, I guess maybe we were just a bit ahead, because I definitely, I guess, as urged as I was, my sexual awakening, I felt very happy with it and like happy to embrace it, I suppose.
Yeah, I see. Going back to something you said earlier about growing up with other boys not fitting in, would you say that you were intimidated by boys, but also intrigued at the same time?
Yes, absolutely.
Especially, thinking of that comment you made about someone's penis. I think there must have been like a level of being intrigued,
Yeah, like there's so many things that stand out. Like I remember when I was on one of those camping trips with Boy Scouts, we sort of walked through a shower area, and one of the leaders was showering, and there was never anything like inappropriate that happened within that group, but all the other boys just sort of walked through, and I was really hoping that we would sort of stop for some reason, so I kind of got to look a bit longer. And those are things, again, like you're too young, you don't have the articulation, and you don't realize, like, you live in a blissful ignorance. So I didn't then go away and say,
at that point?
I would say maybe like 10 or 11.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I don't think I was experiencing sexual attraction. It was more just intrigue. I think, heterosexual boys they're innately very curious about girls. And I think sometimes they express this by making fun of them and pointing out the differences. But I think they tend to do it possibly more than girls do. So I think it went hand in hand. Like when you're same-sex attracted, you experience homophobia, for example, but then you also, you can't help, you know what you like. So I think, oddly enough, like I struggled a lot with self-worth and confidence, like due to all of this. And by the time I was 16, 17, and I was able to use like dating apps and stuff, I really didn't believe that I was that anyone would be interested in me. Like, I thought I would sort of have to not, like, beggars can't be choosers sort of situation. So as soon as I had the opportunity to be with another boy, it was the most exciting thing in the world. And yeah, like, my first relationship was actually a lovely one. It lasted about a year, but I'm so grateful I had that. And it wasn't until later in life that I realized, no, like, you can be confident, you have a lot going for you, and someone would be lucky to be with you. So it's just interesting how, when you have such a small pool of men to choose from, you sort of do have this feeling like, well, I have to take this opportunity, because my whole teenagehood, all of my friends have been like having their first kiss and everything, and I was never one of the, like, no judgment whatsoever. Everyone has their own journey, but I never like came out as bi, like, first, for example, and I had never kissed a girl. Like, the first person I kissed was a boy. So yeah, I never had the interest. I guess I just knew that it felt wrong.
Yeah, because I imagine if like you come to this realization, you accept that you're gay, you might feel like you want to jump on the first guy you come across who's also gay and
That was it. Yeah.
who likes you back, right?
Yes.
Like, it's more about that experience than actually being with the person, sort of.
For sure. And I think, men and women in general approach sex very differently. I think there are many a teenage boy that would probably stick it in anything, if you know what I mean, like, for the first time. And
Oh yeah.
yeah, like, that's true. I mean, yeah, there are lots of odd pairings in my school, but where you think, oh, that's kind of odd that they had sex, but you can kind of see. So yeah, it was very much that. But luckily, the first guy I met, the first boy I had sex with, was my first boyfriend, and he was absolutely lovely.
Like, I have been on gay dating apps and dating websites basically since 2015.
And can I ask, so when you, like,
yeah,
did you experience attraction towards men, or what was your experience?
I was deeply closeted at the time, and it was also like after my surgery, I was already like on my path to detransition, and I had this sort of mentality that I have to date women, like that's what men do.
Okay.
And I was doing that, like I was dating women just to like prove something, especially when I was bullying, people told me that, oh, you could never get a girlfriend, like, you could never be a real man. So I had this mentality of sort of like, watch me, and I was dating women just to prove something there, which is really stupid, actually. But again, I was deeply closeted, but I was in gay dating apps or gay hookup apps, and I was like, no, I'm straight. I like women. Why are you here? Just looking,
Yeah, the heart wants what it wants.
Yeah, and I had this. There's a video of mine this week about like how I was regarding spiders when I was younger, where I was arachnophobic, but I was like constantly looking up spiders on the internet, like pictures, as well as like, where can you buy spiders? What are the prices? Like, what kind of an arachnophobe does that, right? And it was the same thing with
Wow,
men
okay.
for me. Like, I was out there looking them up on those hookup apps, but if someone like sent me a message, I'm like, no, I like women. And I think around like 2017, 2018, I was like more closer to accepting being gay. At what point I even called myself that. But and there was a guy I was dating, and like we kissed. I really enjoyed that. And
is this after your detransition or before?
Yeah. That was after this transition. So I really enjoyed that. And
okay.
At some point, I felt like, I can't be doing this. Like, this is weak and pathetic. Like, the internalized homophobia, is like still strong in there. And I was like, I need to be dating women, to feel like a man.
Sure.
And so I dropped that. I just like, I've met him like the next day, and I told him like, you know what, no, I'm not interested. Which is which is something I regret. Actually,
Hmm.
sometimes even more than transitioning. Like, I don't regret transitioning, just the surgery, to be honest. Otherwise, I think of it as an enriching experience in a way. But
Yeah.
I think, like, yeah, I
Well,
regret that much more, to be honest. Like, when I look back, at my younger days, and like, what could my life look like if I just accepted I'm gay much earlier on, and stuff like that.
mm,
Yeah. I don't know if you can relate to that, because you were much younger than me when you sort of accepted that. So
well, I mean, I can relate to missed opportunities for sure. Like
mhm.
there were many boys that things didn't work out, or perhaps I was not brave enough. And I would regret those scenarios. And then also, like at the moment, I'm in my fourth relationship in life, and it's been going 4 years, and I'm extremely happy. But I've been in past relationships where my heart has been broken, and I've not felt normal for a year. So I think
Sorry.
no, it's good. Like I'm very happy. But I would agree, like, all of those experiences were a learning curve, and they've brought me to who I am today. So
Yeah.
I guess, given that happened, you may just not have been in the right place to actually take that on. But I think, like, something I've learned is when something like that happens, your mind kind of tricks you into thinking, well, that was my shot, now it's gone. But there
Mm.
are so many people out there. Like, the world is abundant, and all you have to do is be brave to keep going. And I think, if you're kind of sure about what you want, and you kind of understand your values, like, the right person will
Mm.
come. It depends if it's something you want or not, of course.
Right now, so I lived a celibate lifestyle for the last 4 years, actually.
Yeah,
And it worked perfectly for me. And right now, I'm like, after 4 years, I had this thought for a while where I was like, should I hook up with some guy right now? But honestly, like, I don't think like I'm into that, like this sort of like hookup culture and things like that. I'm more like into something serious first and
for
foremost.
sure. Yeah,
And it's not just about values, but also like practicality in my case. Like,
yeah,
I would have to explain like why my body is different and things like that. Like,
yeah. I can imagine that would
that's just
be
not something you
intimidating.
want to explain to a stranger like that. So no, I don't engage in that. But yeah,
Mm,
shit. This thing I wanted to say, and started rambling about other things. But so when I was on those apps, I've noticed it so many times that younger members there would get lots of messages from older guys. Like, if you're 16, 17, you get
for
like
sure.
40,
Yeah,
50, 60, even 70-year-old writing to you, like very dirty messages.
yeah,
And like, that's creepy. Like the age of consent in Norway is 16, right? But
yeah,
like, if you're 50 or 60 and you're sending messages like that to someone who's 16, you probably would be interested in someone younger than that. You're just like, what I'm doing is like within the law, so it's all right. You know what I mean?
well, I mean, you're supposed to be 18 to be on these apps, but yeah, I'm not sure I mean, I'm not sure if I agree entirely. I think we have the law because it makes more sense from kind of a mental health perspective to wait till you're 18, particularly with older people. But I think in terms of sexual attraction, um, I think it is a power play, and personally,
Hmm.
I would find it very weird. But I don't think it's like or anything like that to be attracted to someone who's 16. Like, I think technically the definition of philia is sort of, you know,
Like
pre
prepubescent kids, yes.
for
And then
sure.
it's like philophilia for adolescents, and like late teens. There's another term
Really?
which I
Okay.
don't remember what it was. Don't remember that term actually. But yeah, those
Yeah.
are like three different things. But philia became sort of like an umbrella term
Yeah. Yeah,
there.
for
Like,
sure. Yeah, and I think you know, we've advanced so much as a society to sort of create certain rules, which ultimately I think work. But um, I think with gay men, it's very interesting how you see sort of biological tendencies kind of cross over with your sexuality, and it's sort of like two wires getting crossed. So like, you know, men biologically are more attracted towards young women because they're more fertile. They look for
Yeah, yeah.
healthy, like subconsciously on average. Now, this is nothing to say for the individual, and that some boys have a fetish for old women, you know, but on average, um, you know, men are drawn to women who exhibit that youthful beauty because you know, on some level they're more likely to be able to give birth. And I think for gay men, it's like their biology is still trolling them because older men are attracted to the young boys, but obviously it's not, you know, it's not because they want a baby. I think those two things are kind of getting crossed.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Didn't you know that men can have babies in this day and age?
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that
Yeah, no,
changes
nowadays.
everything. That changes everything.
For sure, for
Um,
sure.
yeah, but would you say that after that you have been around in gay community quite a lot in the UK? Or...
Yes, I would say so for sure. I mean, drama school was an
Mm,
interesting experience because from the age of 18 in education, I was no longer the minority, I was the majority. So there was more gay
mm,
men than straight men, which was wonderful because, you know, I was kind of like, it's about time, you know, that I don't feel like the outsider. But at the same
mhm,
time, like
mhm.
I struggled to fit in a lot still. I think there's even though there's a gay community, there's kind of different types of gay communities, and that one was very I found it very performative.
I
Everyone always
see, I
had
see.
their alter ego on, and very bitchy, very two-faced, and I'm not really like
Mm,
that. I'm not I don't put on a performance like as a person, so I didn't really get
mm,
close to any of them. I'm actually very close to one of them now, but that wasn't until after we left. So when I graduated and moved to London, you know, I made a few friends who were also gay, and then I was kind of introduced into the gay nightlife scene. That was probably from the age of like 23. And then I really embraced all of it, like kind of queer rave culture. Um,
yeah,
and it's interesting because obviously pre 2016 things were so different. And at the beginning, I was going mainly to gay nights, and it was more like about gay men. But then very quickly, everything changed to you must be queer. And with queer,
mhm, mhm.
it's not just, I don't personally identify with queer anymore because I see it as more a political term and a political movement. But with queerness, you know, things change and you are expected to kind of push the gender boundaries, like dress non-conforming to
Yeah,
events,
yeah.
dress kinky, like sexual themed events, and then also believe in all of this ideology. And some of my friends really got swept up by this, and I felt left behind. So
Mm,
because
I
I didn't
see, I
want to
see.
lose them, I felt like I had to get on board with this stuff. So I sort of blindly took a leap with believing certain things without giving it much thought. And
Mhm, mhm.
yeah, I guess it was a slippery slope.
I think it is for many, and it's all about like wanting a community, wanting to be a part of something. I think it's also the case for a lot of people who get radicalized by like extreme right.
Absolutely.
You know,
I think
like, and
both sides.
before you consider,
Yeah.
because you know I see especially young men. It's mostly young men who get radicalized by extreme right. A lot of people who
Yes.
identify as incels get swept by that. Lonely men who get swept by that, and it's
Yeah,
insulism is such
100%.
a gateway into extreme right. But yes, please go on.
No, it's just interesting you brought that up because I think one of the key things we're missing in society today is positive masculine and feminine role
Yes,
models. I
yes.
think there's such a push towards us abandoning what masculinity is and what femininity is. And I've been in so many conversations where people are like, what is masculinity? And people say, well, nowadays, like my masculinity is whatever I feel because I'm a man. But I'm kind of like, well, no, like these terms existed for a reason, and masculinity, like, are the traits, on average seen in biological men. And when we talk about having inclination to be competitive, assertive, want to lead, want to provide, want to perhaps stay strong for others and not break down, so many things. And there are many, like, because we're animals, and I think people forget that too, like we are mammals, and I am non-conforming largely. Like, I'm very empathetic and very emotional, very sensitive, but I'm also gay, so I have that nuanced experience. But there are many men who need their masculinity nurtured, and when they're being alienated by women and told that they're toxic just because they have certain masculine values. And I think like something like 1 in 5 men in Western society don't have any friends. So
true. It's crazy if you think about it. It's like
yeah.
in the past, like those male bonds, those friendship bonds were actually very, very strong. And now, especially in big cities, where a lot of guys are like completely alone and isolated. There's a Japanese term called hikikomori.
I've
I don't
heard
know
of
if you
that.
heard of it.
Yes,
Basically, it's a
terrifying.
person who's completely socially isolated, a person who has gave up on their life. And I have plans to actually make videos on this topic.
Interesting.
Perhaps at some point in November now, I would like to do a video on that. I think it's a really interesting phenomenon, actually, we're seeing right
I
now.
think it's the epidemic no one's talking about, really. Everyone's so obsessed with like identity politics and lifting up minorities that, I mean,
which there is important actually, but
for sure. But it because like in my queer circles that I've been a part of, I can't tell you how many times I've heard someone say, "Oh, that straight white man," and most of the time, this man did absolutely nothing. Or friends of mine, people I'm still friends with, no judgment, but they would walk into a bar and immediately go, "Oh, this place is so hetero," and it's hypocrisy to a T. I think if we want to achieve equality, then we do not look down on straight men because that's just who they are. And
I agree 100%. Yeah. Even though I'm like, on a personal level, I don't really have a lot of friends who are like straight and men.
Okay.
Most of the people like I get along with are like women and gay men.
Yeah.
But I don't have anything against straight men, and I'm advocating for men's mental health, which I think is important. So
100%. Yeah. Very interesting conversation so far. Loving it.
Yes, not even how I planned it, but that's how it usually goes. Like,
of course,
you prepare a couple of questions, but conversation goes elsewhere. It's always like that. So
yeah.
But well, we've mentioned like masculinity and femininity. Do you think that in today's society, people confuse masculinity with man and femininity with woman? So like, when we think that there are like more than different genders, we're actually talking about different expressions of femininity and masculinity rather than genders. Like, I think that masculinity and femininity is a spectrum, not the gender.
Absolutely, for sure. I'm glad you say that, because I do find conversations with gender ideologues challenging. But I think, people are misinterpreting masculine and feminine traits to gender. And gender, to me, like, people have different definitions, but it's only the on average traits we see exhibited by men and women. So if I had a list of stereotypical masculine traits and a list of stereotypically feminine traits, like feminine, I mentioned some of the masculine ones earlier, but when we're talking about women, on average, they will be more empathetic, more nurturing, more emotional. They'll be more interested in jobs like teaching and healthcare, working with children. The list goes on. There's so many things. But if you took 1,000 women and 1,000 men and put each of them in a room, on average, you would see more of those masculine traits within the men and more of the masculine traits in the women. Obviously, it says nothing for the individual. And I also think that people misconstrue gender with sexism. because they think, well, to not be sexist and to not be forcing people into stereotypes, I need to be non-binary. And that means I'm like giving the middle finger to the system. Whereas actually, I feel like it's entirely regressive. It's actually saying anyone who doesn't fit into this stereotype is automatically another gender. And, you know, it's very telling that these genderqueer, gender fluid, non-binary people exist largely within queer circles and entirely on the left political spectrum. And that is not how
for sure.
that's not how psychology works, you know?
I have met one conservative non-binary person in my whole life.
No way.
Which is
God, a fish out of water.
Which I think is an anomaly, because you don't see that very often.
For sure.
Like,
yeah, I mean, like, I respect them for navigating that somehow. And look, I think humans always have crazy ideas about the world, and you know, believing in all these different religion. Like, I'm not religious, but ideology is a powerful thing, and it can give people a sense of meaning and purpose, like being spiritual. But I think the problem with gender ideology is that it's not being taught as this is something you believe in, and you need to believe in it, and it's a faith you have, and it will sort of remind you that when times are tough, there's something wider out there. But instead, it's telling you, in order for you to believe it, you need all of society to believe it. And, you know, if I was Muslim, and the only way I could have faith in my religion was to make everyone else believe it, it's a losing battle, you know? It's a total losing battle.
Yeah, I mean, you have to enforce your own beliefs and opinions on other people in order to achieve that.
Yes.
Which, to begin with, is actually, you know, it just creates more animosity in society.
For sure.
But I think, you know, I think that's the case with many religions, when, you know, they are on sort of a mission to convert people. And in that sense, like, the gender ideology has that thing in common.
Yes. I mean, like, the thing about it is every human has the potential to be indoctrinated into a cult. Everyone does. It's a human condition for us to be tribal and for us to believe in this sort of higher power, and we place it in different areas, be it Egyptian gods or you know, the Big Bang or whatever. But I do have sympathy for these people, because some of them are so far in the ideology that they feel they need to educate the world on the new truth. And, you know, they use, like, every person I've been in an argument with this, or like a debate with this on, will say, you know, there have been multiple genders dating throughout the centuries. And my argument to that is, well, like, you know, the Egyptians believed in many gods, and people in Salem believed in witches and burned people at the stake. But just because they believed in it, does that make it valid? And surely, in a society where science has progressed so much, and we have so much more a sense of what is actually true, even though that's regressing a bit lately, why do you deduce that these non-conforming tribal people were somehow more correct than we are? And I think the unfortunate thing about this ideology is a lot of these people, and the world of TikTok, a lot of these people have genuine pain and suffering for whatever reason, but they're placing it in the wrong area. They're choosing to channel and project their pain onto being misgendered, or kind of being so frustrated and triggered by the gender binary. Whereas I feel most of them probably have to actually leave that aside and address what's actually going on in there. And we see a real sense of, with social media and conforming to a collective, as people have really lost a sense of their own identity and who they are and what their values are. So when you're feeling that lost, it being explained by you being non-binary, or you realizing all the stuff about gender, you know, it's palatable and it's appealing. So I can really see how people get sucked in by it.
For sure. And, you know, like, vulnerability when it comes to mental health definitely allows for that. Partially, you know, I think if you're queer, you know, whether if you're gay or trans, you know, you might already feel isolated from the rest of society. right? And I think that is sort of the gateway into radicalization as well, because you already an outsider,
Yes.
you want to belong somewhere, and I think people, or well, maybe not people, but like higher powers, even, I would say, not necessarily like religious or spiritual higher powers, but societal higher powers use that against you in a way.
Yes.
And I think that that's sort of radicalization is happening. That's why I see some queer people who subscribe into like extreme leftist ideologies, because I don't think that
Like
all of the left
communism.
is bad. Like, yeah, like communism, and
Me neither. Like if I had to put a label on, I would call myself a moderate, but like I'm passionate about some left-leaning policy, if it's done correctly. But yes, like on my TikTok, where I've been posting a lot of this same content, YouTube is like, I get 90% amazing comments saying, wow, like really agree, or like you seem like a great person. Some people saying, I disagree with this, but I really appreciate your video. TikTok is like a grenade. It's like a bomb that I'm unleashing, and some of my videos are just still ongoing debates between people I don't even really know, but also people making videos about me, and some of these people identify as communists, and it's insane. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was born in a post-communist country, like not long after the fall of the Berlin Wall, actually. And I think it's important to know your history.
For sure, I think. Yeah,
like I always grew up knowing like a lot about the Soviets and communism and all of that, and how it really works, and how much censorship there was in Poland in the 80s. And now you have like some people on the left, or even people in gay or trans community who might support what we call cancel culture this day. I don't really call it cancel culture. I just call it for what it is. It's censorship. And
exactly.
And I see that people support it because it makes people who you disagree with, or maybe people who you don't like, shut up. So you think of it, yeah, that's good. Let's shut those people up, right? But you have to realize that if you give any corporation or even the state the sort of power to shut people down in this way because of their opinions, they also have the power to shut down you and your opinions. And like, you're next. And that has been a common pattern in most like emerging Marxist and communist countries, that after that is achieved, they are going after other Marxists. Like how many Marxists and communists have been killed by other Marxists and communists? Because it's like, you're not Marxist enough. You need to get rid of, And it's the same thing with cancel culture. Like suddenly, there comes the level of cancel culture where what was previously operating that gets cancelled. And that's when you really see it. Like, hey, hold on, you motherfucker. Like, what the hell are you doing? Right? But oh, no. It was the plan from the very beginning.
Absolutely. I mean, they eat themselves, and the longer they go, that there'll be no one left. And I think their ideology is based off this common fight against the enemy. And, people spew a narrative on TikTok that there is a trans genocide going on, which is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I mean, it's very disrespectful towards people who suffered from the Holocaust. But
absolutely.
Yeah, there are people who, it's like you agree with 98% of trans rights, and then you say, oh, I'm not too sure about trans women in sports, and they go, oh my God, you don't want us to exist. And it's such they've been indoctrinated with this idea, and I obviously have sympathy that they may actually believe that when they say that, which is terrifying. And a boy who commented on, I don't know if he's a teenager or whatever, but he commented on a video I made about Jonathan Van Ness talking about trans women in sports, and he said, you're not trans, you're a cis white gay man, so you're not allowed to speak about this or have an opinion on this. So I argued with him about that, and then I looked on his profile, and he's a communist. He identifies as a communist. So I said to him, it's odd that you say it's odd that you say that I can't speak for anyone else, because that's what he said. So he's like, you can't speak for anyone else but yourself. And I said, you're identifying with an ideology that allows an entire nation to speak for you and tell you what you're allowed to think and what you're allowed to do. So I'm not sure they understand what they're getting themselves mixed up in.
No, it's absolutely crazy. I think one of those biggest issues with the sort of people who think that is a trans genocide is like paranoia of sorts. Just seeing enemies everywhere, around every corner. Like everyone who disagrees with you said, like doesn't want you to exist. And I got a comment on one of my videos where someone said that they won't play Hogwarts Legacy because they want support someone who wants them dead. Like at no point has J.K. Rowling expressed any interest in trans genocide, if that is a thing. I mean, it could be a thing. There are certain movements on the right and the left who would gladly do that, but like mainstream
Extremists,
liberal,
maybe.
but like mainstream liberals, mainstream conservatives, they don't really want to eradicate you and your kind in that way. I think, and but it's hard to engage in a reasonable conversation when you live in that sort of pit of paranoia, when you see enemies everywhere.
Yeah,
And it's
that's
hard
it.
to build a bridge in that sense. So, but at the same time, there's a lot of like reasonable trans people too, and I think we forget that.
For sure.
And even trans people who would disagree with what we're saying right now, but who would gladly engage in the discussion and talk about that too. Even trans activists, and a lot of the media a lot of the time portrays trans activists as insane people, which isn't like always the case. In most cases it's not. It's just like this weird representation in media that tries to portray one side as crazy.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately they obviously choose the most entertaining people, don't they? But
yeah,
I think
it's like saying that Andrew Tate speaks for all men,
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I think like a lot of level-headed trans people, I would assume the majority of them are, probably want to just get on with their lives and assimilate into society. So it's not appealing for them to come out and be a voice, as they'll have to suffer this mob. Now, don't ask me why I'm doing it. Who knows? I think I've always I've always been very very fiery, and I've always found seeing injustice incredibly just unbearable. So when I've kind of discovered all of this stuff, and the situation with kids and how the community is kind of changing, I just kind of felt, for some reason, I feel like I have to talk about this. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy I'm doing it.
Oh, that's actually, I'm happy you're doing it, first and foremost. And I found it very relatable, because at some point, I got to the point where I felt like I wanted to talk about it as well. So I sort of wanted to start making this type of YouTube videos 2 years ago. But at the same time, at that point, I wasn't completely honest about my own past either, because I didn't start talking about my detransition until this year. And I was like, 2021 was the year, like 2020, 2021. That's when my mental health was at the very bottom. Like it was never worse in those years. So I was so mentally unstable that I probably shouldn't have been making YouTube videos at that point, which I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad I waited till now to start doing that.
Yeah, I think, I mean, when society is motivating kids to make content and they're going through hell, you're not in a rational frame of mind. Like when I was going through the depths of my chronic pain, I had an inherent feeling that someday I'm going to get through this and talk about it. But I knew for a fact, like, now is not the time. So.
Yeah. Speaking of chronic pain, let's talk about that, because you've previously made a couple of videos on living with chronic pain and some tips that helped you living with that. Because I myself have been struggling with chronic pain quite a lot ever since my surgery. and it limits my life in the sense that I get pain when I'm running, I get pain when I'm lifting things, and I get pain if I'm being like way too active, if I'm straining myself, which means that I have to sit more than I would like to, you know.
And is that is the pain like in your kind of groin area, or where do you experience it?
Yeah, it's all there, and it hasn't stopped, and it's been like almost 10 years, and I'm still experiencing that, and it probably will never ever go away. But at the same time,
and
there's a risk of.
Sorry, do the doctors, like, can they see that there's still structurally something causing the pain?
I haven't gotten it checked, to be honest, and at this point, like, I don't want to, I don't care, and I don't want for like people looking at me there, you know. So like, I live with it, and there's a risk of osteoporosis as well that you can, you know, develop, like in my case. So actually, I'm getting my bone density checked. I think 3 weeks from now or something like that. I have an appointment, so I'm really curious about that, and I hope it'll turn out all right. So
yeah, me too. I really hope so. And do you take synthetic testosterone, or?
I used to, but I was getting really painful erections from that.
Okay.
Which made it absolutely impossible to function. There's a lot of like erectile tissue I have there, and you sort of get like an erection inside your body.
Yeah.
So like, instead of like an external erection, which is, you know, normal. And it's really painful. So I decided like I can't go into testosterone. Maybe I will, you know, after I do those bone density tests, I might consider maybe going like small doses of testosterone or something like that.
Yeah.
That's always an option, you know.
Yeah, it must be a super hard decision. I think, and with the pain issue, I guess, you know, the world of medicine is always there if you ever change your mind.
And tell me more about this chronic pain you're experiencing. You mentioned autoimmune disease earlier.
Yeah,
how has that affected your life?
So they are separate, to my knowledge, though, you know, probably linked in some way. But so my autoimmune disease is called ulcerative colitis, and it is an inflammatory bowel disease. So Crohn's disease is the other one in the family. And you typically experience kind of flare-ups of that throughout your life and go into periods of remission. So when you're having a flare-up, you get kind of ulcerations in your colon. There's an overproduction of white blood cells, so the area gets extremely inflamed, and that means you have to rush to the toilet like up to 20 times a day. You have a lot of bleeding. You have intense cramps and pain. So I got diagnosed with that when I was 21, but the symptoms were very mild. And then from the age of probably 23 to 25, it was absolutely horrendous, and they couldn't find any drugs that really worked. And they were sort of saying, you know, we may have to surgically remove your colon. So I'd be living with a bag. But
wow.
I was taking a biological infusion like every 8 weeks, which actually did the trick after about 9 months on it. So it's great. Like since I think September 2019, I've been in remission, and I'm now off that infusion, but it's not returned. I think the key thing I've learned from it is as soon as I experience any of those mild symptoms, I just have to treat it straight away. And then I avoid, but at the time I wasn't informed as a patient, and they told me you have to wait 4 months for your appointment. So that was a really critical time. So that's that story. And then in September 2019, I had about 2 months of kind of relief and feeling like a normal person. And then just kind of one day, I just developed this intense pain, like in my head, or, you know, a better way to describe it is my face. Like it's sort of a bilateral pressure that sort of feels like I have a sinus headache. And it was extremely intense and sort of frightening, I suppose. And at the beginning, it sort of came and went, for a few days at a time, or like a week at a time. But as the year progressed, I, started waking up with it every day. It would sort of go away. And then by the kind of end of 2020, it was constant and, here to stay, basically. So,
wow.
Yeah. And I went through a lot of medications, which, really messed up my mind. Some of which, the majority of which did nothing for me. And I had 2 sinus surgeries. I've had all sorts of appointments with, like, neurologists, ENTs, pain consultants, rheumatologists, test after test, multiple MRI scans, CT scans. The list goes on. And this took over my life for about 3 years. But I'm still not fully sure, what exactly it is, because I've made a lot of progress recently. And part of it is I kind of learned that my bite and my jaw was kind of in a really unhealthy position. So I'm using Invisalign to correct that, and I've experienced a lot of relief since then. But with any chronic pain disorder, it is typically more complicated than just, the physical. I think many people with back pain will think that there's something actually wrong with their back, but in the majority of cases, people suffer from something called neuroplastic pain. And this is essentially when your brain learns a habit of feeling pain, because pain is only your brain's opinion on a sensation. And when I touch a surface, my brain has learned that that's my hand touching that. So if you develop a hypersensitivity, your brain will start exhibiting normal feelings and touches as pain. And when you don't realize that, it's a vicious cycle that feeds itself. And typically people with chronic pain have a lot of the personality traits that I do, like quite prone to anxiety, perfectionists, people pleasers, sort of OCD kind of tendencies. And I've had that whole spectrum, although I'm doing really well now. And I think, the best way to describe it is when you have chronic pain, like pain is a great thing, because it's our brain's way of telling us, hey, something is wrong, you have to address this.
Like a warning signal of sorts. We need that,
That's exactly it. And a chronic pain is like the fire alarm going off, but no one turns it off and it's broken. But when you believe that there's something wrong with your body, you have an inherent sense of anxiety and you don't feel safe within your own body. So your brain actually thinks that it needs to keep up the pain because you still believe that something is wrong. And I think there's the line is quite fine. I mean, if you've never had a headache before and you get one, there's a big difference between someone saying, oh, this will pass, I'm just going to like rest for a while, and someone saying, oh my God, what is this? I've never felt this before. What if this never goes away? What if I have a brain tumor? And that kind of thinking can cause a cycle that after a few weeks can potentially progress into years. And it's the whole world of it's so interesting. And I do hope to one day sort of actually work in a field as well. As I am training in psychotherapy, so I think that's something I would love to be able to help other people with, because it's helped me a lot.
Yeah, that's lovely. Would you say that people with like hypochondriac tendencies also tend to be more unhealthy, sort of like a self-fulfilling prophecy? Or
well, yeah, I guess it's how you describe unhealthy, because some people may be very risk averse in the sense that they never kind of take a leap of faith. They don't put themselves out there. They sort of view many scenarios as inherently unsafe. So, I mean, that's an unhealthy way for anyone to live, because they deprive themselves of experiences, and they also live in a mind which is kind of like its own form of hell. And I think people are born biologically with different levels of your nervous system sensitivity. So like my childhood, for example, my family was very dysfunctional. There was substance abuse in my home, and there was a lot of kind of narcissism from one of my parents, emotional abuse. And depending on who you are, you might be able to get through that and, largely be able to work through it. Maybe not easily, but there's different levels. Now, like from a very young age, my mom told me I was just so emotional and sensitive to sort of everything, which was on some ways caused me to be upset, but on other ways caused me to embrace being like loads of wonderful things, like seeing kind of the abstract in things and being very creative. So if a child is born with a hypersensitive nervous system and it's raised securely, that child will be absolutely fine. Whereas if a child has their nervous system is cranked up a little bit and you raise them in an unsafe environment, then that child will potentially struggle. And there's a very strong link between the more adverse child experiences you have, such as physical abuse, mental abuse, a death, divorce of your parents, the more likely you are to develop chronic pain. So it's incredibly interesting.
Yeah, I think that was really informative, actually. And I'm pretty sure people watching this think the same thing. And I appreciate your insight in that topic.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think like it's not, it's really something we should all be educated on. I think something I'm quite passionate about is that society does not equip us to be an informed patient and to understand when we seek help that we are a customer, even if it's free healthcare. And I think we should be empowering people from a young age to be in touch with their bodies and shop around, for a better term, when they experience anything, rather than going to a doctor and just trusting what it says. And I do believe medicine has a place. Some medicine has really helped me, but I think I've made decisions in the past which I regret because I was looking to the person with all the knowledge, and it's never that simple.
Yeah, I imagine. I think like mental health and physical health is so connected in many ways, especially there's so many like psychosomatic conditions that all of it like is almost psychosomatic. A lot of like physical symptoms we are experiencing can be, signs of anxiety or panic attacks and so on and so on. And then there's this condition where you are literally experiencing seizures.
Yeah.
But they are not caused by the same things that normal seizures are usually caused by. It's psychosomatic. So, like your stress can literally cause seizures in certain individuals, and I've experienced it myself because I have I have had experience with seizures since 2018, and now they are very rare. Like they happen once a year, but in 2018, 2019, I have had like sometimes several seizures a month and things like that. The first time I had,
they never said you had epilepsy.
No, they didn't. But also at first, they just like on my first visit to a hospital when I had my first seizure, and that was a terrifying experience actually. They concluded that I was just a panic attack that I had because my palms were sweaty and like my heart rate were heightened. But I also had one of the most terrifying experiences of my life at that point. I thought I was having a stroke. So obviously, I had a heightened heart rate, and also I have like some medical trauma. So whenever I'm like at clinics or hospitals or emergency centers, I panic automatically because of my experience with the surgery and things like that. So of course my palms get sweaty. So there was a bit of a misunderstanding there exactly why I had those symptoms of panic attack at the same time as I also experienced a seizure. But yeah, like it's connected. It's not like mental health and physical health are two separate entities of sorts, especially considering how like living a healthy lifestyle regarding, your eating habits and your exercise will also affect your mental health as well.
Yeah, I mean, they call it biofeedback. It's like it works in both ways. You do physical things that treat your mind, and then you do mental things that treat your body. And I think there's a real disconnect these days for educating society on that. I think through all of this and permeating a lot of the things we're talking about is there's with technology, I think everyone is forgetting that we are mammals. Like I've said this before, but like there's such a disconnect between us being, like biological beings and people just thinking that we're at a stage of such intelligence progression now that we override biological tendencies. It's just totally it's a fool's game to believe anything like that. And when it comes to the things you mentioned, like psychosomatic, they're all, like I mentioned, neural plastic pain and neural circuit pain. They're all forms of neural circuits as well. So if someone has IBS or they get an upset stomach, all it takes is for that to happen once, twice, for your brain to say, okay, I understand what this pattern is. And then as soon as you start getting anxious or stressed, you might think, oh, but what if my stomach gets bad? I hope that doesn't happen. And it's a very strong, I think people just, when you say it to people, it sounds fantastical. They're like, there's no way that it could be that like that. But it is. Like we see it with veterans who have PTSD and they come back and they hear, I don't know, the sound of a helicopter and immediately they break down and they are on the floor. And that's a neural circuit issue. Like it's a total learned behavior. So I think I relate to you a lot because after I'd been through the worst of my autoimmune disorder and I started getting this pain, I think perhaps in the past I would have just ignored it more and thought, I'm sure it will be fine. But because I had been through so much medically and I was on high alert and I was sort of so used to being like not safe in my body, I immediately thought, what the hell is this? Oh my God, what's happening to me now? And I was straight away seeing doctors and wanting to solve it. But in reality, it should have done the complete opposite, I guess.
Yeah, no, I can see that. You mentioned technology, and that is actually one of my favorite things to talk about.
Yeah.
To be honest, like I'm a transhumanist, so I'm very positive towards technology. I would even say I'm techno progressive in that sense. But I also acknowledge that we think of ourselves that we are like higher on that development scale than we actually are. And like gender transition is one of those things when we think we have sort of we're able to overcome and override like biological sex, which we're really, really not. Like you cannot change your biological sex through transition. You can masculinize yourself and feminize yourself. And it works for some people, like you can be happy with that, but you cannot like fully become the opposite sex. But do you think it will be possible at some point?
Oh gosh, I mean, it depends. Like I'm not a scientific researcher, so I really couldn't say it all. But I guess it depends, like what the definition of your biological sex is. Does it just mean what you innately are, like without any intervention and without anyone kind of getting in the way of that, or does it mean? Because I've listened to debates of like left-wing trans people, and they say, well, if you're taking the opposite hormone, then that is changing your biology. And I just wonder, would a scientist agree with that, or what do you think?
Well, most scientists wouldn't agree with that unless they want to cater to them. It's more political than scientific, really. But if you think, I'm thinking like sex on chromosomal level, genetic.
Oh yeah.
And
I think crazy.
I think potentiality for that is already there because there are certain species, there are certain organisms who can adapt and like actually change their sex for like survival purposes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
And in a way, with the right way of implementing something technological, you can practically change anything that is made of matter, transform it in a way. And like that's the very like essence of technology. What it does, it's like transforming nature right into something new. And in that sense, like technology is nature. It's not something separate from nature. It's just nature transformed by human activity. But is it
Yeah.
unique to humans? Like birds are doing the same things, like when they're building nests. Like a bird nest is
Yes.
not something that will just occur naturally without an involvement of some animal involvement with purpose, right? There's a purpose to that while you're building that nest. And in that sense, we're not that different from other animals. We like to think of ourselves as different, as somehow, the way we implement technology is unique. No, it's more advanced, but it's not like unique to humans. And I like to entertain this idea that someday it will be possible to change like XX to XY or XY to XX, with
And
like
do you think
with
that would
genetic
be,
manipulation. And
do you think that would be like a good thing?
I wouldn't say it's a good thing or it's a bad thing, but I'm thinking there will definitely be a thing, with gene therapy, like how it will evolve and everything. What can it be good about it? Well, if you actually do wish to change your sex, you will be able to do that this time, not just on the surface, but like actually change your sex. And I think
But
for
then
that
what,
sort of.
like, so what happens if you are like, if your anatomy is male, but then you change your chromosomes to XX? Like, how does that play out in the phenotype?
Well, I mean, it won't really like change your anatomy otherwise. But you
Yeah.
can parade it around, right? Like you can say, look, I'm actually XX, I'm not XY, right?
I mean, it will be a great
And
argument for trans activists.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I think more trans people should be using that argument, to be honest. Like, here I am giving it for free. Please go ahead and use this argument. It's a gift
Oh,
from
like
me.
one day it will be possible.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. To what degree and in what way? Well, we can't really be certain because our like epistemic insight into future has its limits. Like we can try and predict certain things based on certain patterns of technological and societal development, but we can't really know things with certainty, right?
Yeah, like it does. I mean, I kind of am on a similar level to you. I find technology very exciting, and I feel grateful in a way for the experiences I've been through because I am very in touch with my mind and my body, and I want to remain that way like forever. So I think there's a way I can participate in technology without losing that. But I mean, some new technology is frightening. Like I don't know what will happen in the world of AI, and like who
Oh, that's
knows what
very
the world will look like
reasonable
in 20
to
years.
think that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think AI should be regulated, to be honest. I think, it can be useful in certain ways, but we need like laws around AI just to regulate that, because that can get out of hand really quickly. And actually, I've watched a video early today. There's an interview of a guy who makes this one of the most advanced like AI robots at the moment. I think the name of that robot is Ameca.
Okay.
And so one of the questions they asked him in that interview, like, could it ever happen that those robots will like rebel against humans and eradicate us?
Yeah.
And his response to that was, no, it will never happen because we can turn them off. And that is such a short-sighted and narrow way of thinking. Like, you can turn them off. Well, guess what? Technology will evolve faster than you unless we evolve through technology.
Of
So I
course.
think we should
Yeah.
I think we should focus, more on our own technological evolution rather than on AI, because if it's a race at this point, really.
Yeah, and I just question, like, at what point as a society do we say, okay, well, this new thing is possible, but let's just leave it? Like, do we need it? Like there's certain things where I think everyone can agree that social media as a whole has been damaging I mean, I guess that's a debate but there's bonuses, and then I think there's lots of cons. So when we face other decisions like this, do people ever decide, well, this is progression, but it actually is not beneficial?
I think when it comes to social media, I think that the cons outweigh the pros. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think
even though, hello, we're on social media.
Yeah, technically. I mean, in terms for like communication, I think internet played a big role there in how we communicate ideas. Like we're sort of back to mostly like oral exchange of ideas rather than written exchange of ideas that technology allowed us to do, which is actually sort of like going way back to the past. And I've made a video about it, posted it today actually.
Oh, nice. I'll check that out.
It's a very recent, yeah. It's like 4 reasons why we're going back to ancient Greece, because I don't want to talk only about like trans stuff and detrans and gender. Yeah. I think it's. I like diversity on my channel. Like different sorts of topics. And speaking of diversity, would you say that gay community, or I would say even queer community, because I want to include more people than just gay, but like trans as well. Would you say that there's a lot of diversity of thought among queer individuals, or would you say that they all think alike, or something in between?
I guess as a whole, no, that there's not much diversity at all. There's actually the antithesis to that. Now you get pockets of friend groups and individuals who say, okay, like I have a couple of gay friends who've never been into the queer scene, and they told me I've always seen it as very culty. And then you also get kind of, at least here and in the US, but definitely a movement of gay men, which are sort of the more sexualized kind of kind of bitchy, but in a funny way, kind of towards each other. And I don't think they are very ideological. I think their life is more about kind of making sexual jokes and kind of being a bit ridiculous and stuff. I think it's less, personally, it's less harmful than the other. But no, I think I've seen too many people argue that being gay and conservative politically is hypocritical, which I think is utter nonsense. And I think someone I find quite intriguing is ContraPoints, because do you know who she is?
Oh yeah, I love ContraPoints. I watch her content actually.
Yeah, I mean, I think she's obviously incredibly intelligent, but she said so many things I disagree with. Like I watched her on a podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I don't agree with everything she says either, but like I appreciate her content, and I like listening to her. I'll agree on some things, I'll disagree on other things.
Yeah, and I appreciate her as a person, and I think it's great, like how much how passionate she is about what she speaks in, and we need more of that. I saw her on a podcast where the topic was LGBT conservatives, and their arguments I thought were just very hypocritical. I think to reduce someone down to their gayness and say that their ideology is hypocritical purely because they might just believe in like an economy, a policy to do with the economy or immigration or something, it makes no sense. And I think what I find curious is that people don't understand, or maybe are not empowered to understand, that left-wing ideas and policy can be just as oppressive as right-wing.
Yes,
absolutely. And I can give you an example of, in the UK, we have a public health service of which everyone is entitled to, no matter what your background or economic, situation. And sounds great, right? I mean, it's funded by taxes, and it used to be great, but now the system is entirely broken. Everyone's underpaid, all the staff are miserable, and I just got a letter through last week to be seen, and it said the 7th of October, and I was like, wow, okay, that's soon, I'm surprised. And I'd been waiting on the letter since maybe May. Then I had a closer look, and it said 7th of October 2024. And I thought, okay, that's more like it. So in this sense, this system is taking our taxes to fund, and it's completely broken. So you have people who are too sick to work, having to stay home for 2 years before even being seen. They can't participate in society. They can't pay taxes. So that it's oppressive, like for them, and it's actually holding them back. So that's an example of a left-leaning like idea or policy, and it's actually oppressing us as a society. So I think the more people understand that either side can be manipulated to oppress nations, then the more people will be accepting of someone believing in like something conservative.
Yeah, we have very similar problem here, actually. Because, like, in that sense, well, UK and Norway are not that different. There's a long, like, waiting time to get any sort of treatment. And, well, the problem is, like, let's say you, because of some illness, whether it's physical or mental, let's say you are not able to work at like 50%. Your work ability has been reduced by like 50%. Well, yeah, you will be getting money from the government for that. But if you choose to try and work, and how much can I work? The amount that you earn will be taken away from you.
Yeah.
So there's like no incentive to try and get back into work, because well, what you earn will be taken away from you. And if you end up working more than 50%, then you like lose everything that you've earned. And now let's say you're capable of working 60-70%. You might still end up getting less than what you did back when, the government was paying you.
Right. Yeah, well,
So
I think in this country,
it's crazy. Like, why should someone try when you can just live off, that instead of working?
Well, this is the issue with left-leaning policy, is that it opens its doors to, for want of a better term, laziness. And I'm not suggesting sick people are lazy, but there's
No,
always going to be people who abuse the system. Like I saw an interview of a woman who she gave birth to like 10 children because she wanted the child's benefit for all of them. So she was earning close to 50K a year because of this. And everyone was telling her, this is terrible. But, she was like, well, the government are giving me it. So like, blame the government. And I agree with her in a sense. But in the UK and the US, the welfare system is not good. So I think there would be very rare cases in which it would be better for you economically to not work than work. Like it would give you a very unlivable amount. In Ireland, that's a different situation. The welfare system is actually quite good. So you have a lot of people there just opting into it and kind of not doing anything. So yeah, like I don't know. I think a middle ground where in the UK, like maybe you can live on it, but it does kind of give you the kick up the ass to say, no, I need to contribute to society. And, I guess with earning any money, we always have to teach people, well, what's the value of earning this money? And the value is finding something that drives you and that you're passionate about, so to monetize that rather than just seeing money for simply money.
Definitely. One thing I wanted to mention before that I totally forgot, like, here in Norway, we have, and it's a political party that's like furthest to the right. In their party, they have like one of Norway's most well-known trans people. And it's also like the most well-known trans politician.
In Poland, is it? Or did you say
Norway? In Norway.
Okay.
So you get to hear so much about like how it's the left that is so trans friendly, and yet it's the party that's like furthest to the right that has like a very, very popular transgender politician.
Yeah.
I think she's in parliament now. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that might be the case right now.
Yeah, it
So
doesn't
it's like the
surprise me.
first trans woman in parliament from like the far right party.
Well, in the UK, we also have one trans MP, and so he's the first openly trans politician, and he's part of the Conservative Party. So, you know, it's like Blair White, who I absolutely adore. She obviously represents. She was the first to open this lane of like someone who's trans being center right. And I don't even think her ideologies are extreme at all, but.
No, I don't think so either.
She has a good argument saying, well, would you not prefer for there to be a representation of who you are on the other side? Because if they gain power, then at least you have a voice in there. And that to me makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you know, I think it also has its function when there are trans people who lean more to the right, because they are more likely to engage with conservatives and are more likely to like change their minds about trans people. So I think it has an important function to have like trans people in a conservative environment of that sort of conservative political environment.
Yeah, and it works both ways. I mean, humans always have this, you know, tendency to start viewing different groups of people as less human. So you know, far right people may see, like, I mean, there was a time when white people actually believed that Black people were like not, you know, inherently not as human as them. And now the left, the woke left, believes that cis white straight men are somehow inferior. So the more we can spend time with these people and actually realize, oh wait, you're just kind of a normal person going about your life, then the more we can, you know, let go of these ideas. But when you're committed to staying in your echo chamber and avoiding these people, then, you know, it never happens really.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I'm going to ask you two final questions before we finish this. But before we go there, would you like showing off your dog?
Yeah, sure. Hello. Oh, sorry, he just ran out of the room. So this is not my dog. It is a friend's, but his name is Mischief, and he is a Dachshund, so a sausage dog. And we actually have a sausage dog too, but he's not here tonight, so I can bring him on camera another time.
Cool.
Say bye.
Cool. He's a celebrity now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, when I make it big, people.
Is his name Mischief?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, must be a reason for that name, or.
Well, I mean, they're funny. They're a funny breed. They kind of they have a very funny personality. They can be a bit mischievous, I guess. Yeah.
Cool. So here's my two final questions because it's late here and I haven't made dinner yet. So
okay, yeah, you better fill that belly.
Yeah. So the first question is, you know, there are some people who say that T should be separated from LGB. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I talked about this actually. I did a reaction video to the liberal versus gay conservative Jubilee.
Me too. It's I'll try to upload it tomorrow actually.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'll check it out. So I can understand the arguments from both sides. Now, I think in terms of trans people, as Blair would like to call them, the classic trans people who have gender dysphoria from a young age and transition by means of, you know, the medical procedure and everything. I think what does unite us is growing up with an inherent sense of being different and the confusion of working this out as a child. I think there's something, so many of us, we have to just work it out on our own. Like the most LGBT and dysphoric people grapple with these thoughts by themselves, and by the time they tell anyone, they've sort of had to work that all out. So for that reason, I would say no. And I know trans people who that would upset me if that was the case. However, for the ideological, you know, for the rest of it, you know, the non-binaryism, genderqueer, etc. Like I do, like take Demi Lovato for example. I find her offensive as a woman who's only been with men, deciding to identify into queerness because it's a trend, and that is, I think the term appropriation is obviously overused, but that is appropriation in my opinion. And I think a lot of the time non-binary people were originally gay, so obviously that's fine, like they just have their belief. But I think as a whole, in terms of, you know, the more traditional trans people, no. But I think the fact that we lump in intersex and asexual people intrigues me, because I talked about this in my video and I got a comment from someone who's asexual, and they said, wow, like I finally feel heard because you acknowledged, like, I wonder if asexual people feel really out of place because it's such a sexual community. And I'm not sure. I think that there's a movement from Stonewall and activist charities to say, okay, so we've sorted out gay rights. Who else can we add to this? Okay, let's go for the intersex people. And I would only assume the majority of intersex people do not identify with LGBT, and that they sit in the binary.
Well,
but I don't know for sure.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of intersex people who don't identify as men or women, actually.
Okay, yeah.
So, I think it's interesting, and you know, it makes perfect sense because, you know, you're actually having a genetical abnormality. So it would make sense that, you know, you might not feel at home with terms like man or woman. Completely understandable. But,
that's the most valid form of that identity I've ever heard. So yeah, I can get on board with that.
You know, it's not just like what the thing I used to say is that a non-intersex person claiming to be non-binary is like a fully abled person sitting in a wheelchair.
Exactly. And have you heard of?
It's like a controversial and offensive thing to say, but I think it's funny. So.
Me too. Like, have you heard of body integrity identity disorder?
Yeah.
So I asked the question. I mean, so if you went to a doctor and you said, I've never felt like my right arm is part of me and I need it removed, it's causing me intense, like they feel dysphoric about a limb, or they feel dysphoric about not being paralyzed. And there's very few people who would probably say, yes, they should offer that as a form of treatment. Yet, they may also be the same people who say, yes, if you should cut your genitals off, or you should remove your breasts. And I'm not saying that they should take that away, but I do pose the question: what is the difference?
I think it's a reasonable question to ask. Actually, you know, it's sort of hypocritical to like acknowledge one but not the other. And like, you know, my personal take is that I'm not against transitioning or anything like that. I think I even think that, you know, in some cases transitioning can actually really help people in that sense. But you know, there are side effects associated with HRT, and there's well, in general, like, I'm against those surgeries. I think those surgeries are just preying on desperate people. And like, and it's a big lie, those surgeries, because you do not get the actual effects you're paying for. You know, you're getting scammed basically, and those surgeries haven't improved at all in like the last 60 years.
Yeah, they're highly complex, aren't they, with many complications.
Yeah, I just think we're not ready for that yet, to be doing those surgeries, to be honest. And it's even worse for transgender men, because, you know, like phalloplasty, the creation of this like artificial penis, it's so bad. Like as a trans woman, you get better results than as a trans man on average, I would say, because, you know, things can go really wrong there too, like as it was in my case. But like as a trans man, you have two options. You can either like enlarge your clitoris, or you can there's I don't know the name of this procedure, but there's one where you take like a skin graft. Yeah, skin graft, and you make like a penis out of that. But it's it's not functional, and it's like it's always the same size. It doesn't get erected and things like that.
Yeah, I wonder what the percentages of people that actually are happy with these things. And there's always going to be
Yeah.
outliers. Like, there's always going to be some people who are happy with it, of course, but I would be curious as to like whether that's the majority.
Yeah, I mean, I think the research that has been done until now has been biased too. So I'm all for like
For
unbiased
sure.
research. That I think people
Yes.
shouldn't be like emotionally involved in this topic. Like they shouldn't have a personal stake in that when doing research. And my impression of like a lot of researchers is that at least like, at a university, most people go into that with like a specific result in mind that they want to get. Like they want to prove something rather than a natural curiosity to find out the truth.
Well, for sure. I mean, this is what
Yeah.
we see with activist organizations driving this research. And I
Mm.
think like a big thing, and I'm not delegitimizing anyone's experience here, but the trans suicide rate is incredibly inflated. And,
Yeah.
they get a lot of these stats from a survey of asking people who choose to fill it in, have you ever felt like harming yourself? And I'm not taking that statement away from anyone, but it's easy for someone who's mixed up with a very ideological movement such as this to say, yes, of course I have. Whereas that's a very extreme state of mind to sit in. And the numbers just they don't add up in that sense. Like, the statistics here in the UK say, up to 50% of trans people have attempted to kill themselves. And what we actually see is the rate of suicide within the transgender community is no higher than that within anyone suffering from a mental health condition such as anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, or schizophrenia.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Also, like the suicide rate among transgender individuals is higher than in gay community. Like like gay people don't do that as much as trans people.
Yeah, I'm not too sure
Unfortunately,
about that
so.
actually.
I'm not
Yeah.
saying that it doesn't happen, but I think in general, like that is more of a
Well,
crisis among transgender individuals than in gay community.
I think you point out something very telling, because there's a push for people to suggest that gender dysphoria is not a mental disorder, and it's just the same thing as like accepting that you're homosexual. But like, while I believe that we should be united, I think there should be a
Mm-hmm.
big
Mm-hmm.
difference between, for me to live as a gay man, I didn't need any medical intervention. I could just do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when something is pathologized, then you can't pathologize something and then say, well, there's nothing wrong going on there, they're just living their truth. And I
Mm.
believe that transition is right for some people, but we need to acknowledge that it is a disorder. And then if the suicide rate is higher in trans people than gay people, then there you go.
No, absolutely. And I share your opinion that we should be united. I don't think we should separate LGBT from the T.
Cool.
Mostly, I just think we can accomplish more together, and we're both being sort of like ostracized from society for that reason. Like we're both outsiders, freaks, But I also think it's important to acknowledge the difference. Like one is about
Yes.
sexual orientation, another one's about gender identity, and I'm the argument I like to use is that you can't really compare homosexuality to being transgender because, and if it's aligned with what you just said, but like at
Mm.
the end of the day, it is a mental illness of sorts because it's not just like the cause of your distress is lack of acceptance. When you have this sort of intense gender dysphoria, like more acceptance won't solve that. you know
Yeah, I
it's
agree.
it
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I think, yeah, obviously with being gay, like you do need the rest of society to say, well, no, it's normal. Like we'll leave you alone, like live your life. And
yeah.
then for most people, that does the trick. But obviously, gender dysphoria is more of an intense discomfort within yourself.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I want to finish it off on a fun note. So you're from UK. What are your favorite UK TV shows, like TV series, something like that? Do you have any of those? Because I
Oh,
love UK television. So.
yes. So one of my favorites is Strike, and people will try to cancel me over this maybe, but the book, the crime novels that J.K. Rowling has written, I love them so much, and there's a TV series based off them, and it's set in London,
Okay,
and
heard of
I
it.
love, yeah. So it's called Strike. There's one season for each book, so that one is amazing. I'm trying to think what else I've seen. Yeah, no, I can't. I can't remember. I used to love Sex Education, but I think that's been captured by the woke movement. Like, I mean, there's lots of good like miniseries out there. There's one that I loved called "I May Destroy You," which is sort of the theme is kind of sexual assault in that one. There's another one called "The Capture," of which there's 2 seasons, and that's again crime. And actually, speaking of technology, it's about features of AI in which the government stage certain terrorist attacks and stuff to be caught on camera for the sake of, putting people behind bars
Oh,
and
okay,
manipulating people that they assume to be criminals but can't catch them in the act. So that one's very interesting too. So yeah, so I'd recommend Strike, The Capture. I can't remember the other one I said, but check them out.
yeah, I'll check them out. Check them out. I'm mostly into sitcoms, actually.
Okay, yeah, I
Yeah,
can't say
yeah.
they're my
So,
thing. I love Friends, but yeah.
oh, okay, okay. Now I like out of British sitcoms. I love Black Books, men behaving badly, keeping up the appearances, stuff like that.
I've never seen those, so
Oh yeah, those are classics. We're talking 90s. I think Black Books is from like early 2000, something like that. But it's Jack, it was lovely having you on my channel. So everybody,
yeah.
I left a link to Jack's channel in the description. Go check him out, and you'll see me on his channel as well, probably very
Yes,
soon.
for sure. We're going to do an interview.
Yeah,
So yeah, thanks to everyone who stayed for this long. And
it's usually like
yeah, Alex.
30% that does that.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's pretty good going. Do you go by Alex, by the way, as a nickname, or just Alexander?
So the way I like to say it is, it's always Alexander unless you're in a hurry or you want to shag. Then you can say Alex.
Okay. Well, I've got all the time in the world. So,
Yeah.
Alexander, it's been, yeah, incredible talking
I'm
to
feeling
you.
friend zoned right now. I'm
Uh,
joking.
well, I am in a monogamous relationship, which is another conversation.
Yeah,
But
no problem,
no,
no
it's
problem.
been so insightful and very stimulating. And I hope that we can stay in touch and support each other in
Yeah,
our
yeah.
YouTube ventures for sure.
Sure. We can meet up next time I'm in London.
I would love that. I would love
So
that.
yeah, yeah. I have a lot of stops I want to make in UK right now, but yeah, I'll be
Yeah,
there.
nice. Sounds good.
Yeah. Right.